Thank you so much for attending my session. As they say save best for the last, so you're probably attending one of the best sessions. Without further ado, I will be talking about developing compelling applications with Java and PHP on SQL Server and SQL Azure. My name is Amina Saifi. I'm a lead program manager in SQL Server division. Oops. Okay. So what are the key session objectives for this presentation? I want to cover two aspects of Java and PHP developers as part of this talk. One is what we are doing with respect to Denali, and second is what our position is with respect to the cloud, SQL Azure and Windows Azure. I do want to point out that this talk is not a deep dive on Windows Azure platform, but I am leveraging a lot of Windows Azure and SQL Azure tools as part of my demo, just to walk you through the whole experience of developing application locally and then moving into the cloud. Any question, feel free to ask me in between. You don't have to wait till the end. The more interactive, the better for us. Quick agenda. I'll go through a quick introduction of what I do and what my team is responsible. And then, as I said, we'll go into what's coming in Denali, especially for Java and PHP developers. And then I'll walk you guys through the demo. And then a brief overview of what are the various tools available for cloud development. So in case you didn't catch my name the first time, I'm Amina Saifi. I'm a lead program manager as part of SQL connectivity. So as part of SQL connectivity, we are responsible for data access technologies such as ODBC, ADIO.NET, JDBC, PHP. What I'm responsible for as part of SQL connectivity is for Java and PHP developers, for SQL Server and SQL Azure. I'm old-fashioned, so you can contact me via my email address, amisaifi@microsoft.com. But if you really want to use like all the latest hip trend, you can reach me at Twitter too, but you'll get faster response if you email me. So now we are done with the introduction. Let me introduce some of our customers who are using our Java JDBC driver with SQL Server and SQL Azure. So some of these are key end users in financial industry. For example, BT Financial Group, Scottrade, BNY Mellon, they are end users. They are using SQL Server with their Java application platform for production, for mission critical applications, as well as we have very crucial key partnership with some of the ISVs such as IBM and SAP. IBM certifies our JDBC driver with their WebSphere application server. They're very, very crucial partner to us at every stage of development and production. They provide us very critical feedback. Same with SAP. We have very close relationship. They ship our JDBC driver with their NetWeaver platform, which is their key platform for all their business suites. Scottrade, one of the end users, they are heavily engaged with us in providing feedback on our last community technical preview, which came out back in January. And I'll talk more about it towards the end of the presentation. Now, oops, I keep going back. OK. Some of the major applications which are on our PHP platform for Windows and SQL Server. Some key applications, Sugar CRM, Drupal. Drupal is, I believe, number 3 in top 50 Netcraft PHP applications. Very key partner. They also provide us very key critical feedback throughout the development. Sugar CRM, we are very closely working with them on the development as well as for their load test environment and everything. So very, very good partners. Now, next to what's new in Denali. So let's start with PHP. So these are 3 PHP pillars which we have designed for Denali. One of our focus based on the customer feedback is we do want to optimize the data access for PHP workloads. So some of the key features which we are bringing as part of Denali release are buffer queries with client-side result sets and cursors and paging results. And I'll talk more about it in the subsequent slides. One of the main features of Denali, always on, you've been hearing about it the whole conference and prior to that at PASS. Since our PHP driver is built on top of ODBC, we will expose all the always-on connectivity features as part of PHP driver as well. So PHP developers will take full advantage of all the always-on features on server side. One of the main features which is coming out in Denali is Serverless Express. It is actually one of the, or SQL Express local database. It is actually one of the key features which is specifically targeted for PHP developers. So let's drill down some more into these features. What we mean by buffered queries with client-side result sets and cursor. So buffered queries will allow you to have entire result set in the memory. It will be done by the driver. PHP developers are used to using row count by default. So with this feature, we will enable that too. It leverages the common programming model for PHP applications. One of the benefits is it will provide reliable access to row count and faster scrollable cursor. And it also consumes results immediately and frees up memory, so you'll have better performance. And it will be an optional feature, so if you want to use it, then you can enable it via connection string. Paging results. So paging is a very, very basic scenario in PHP application development environment, especially for web applications. Today, if you want to do paging using our driver and SQL Server, you have to use some really complicated code, whereas some competitive providers, they provide a limit clause, which makes it very simple for you to do paging. With Denali, we are coming out with an offset clause, which will allow you to do paging in a very, very simple syntax. So as I mentioned, standard programming model for PHP applications. It will also reduce memory footprint and much, much simpler syntax than previous SQL Server versions. OK. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. This is for your reference. I'm sure you guys have seen this plenty of time. And I will cover a little bit more on the JDBC side on the differences. But it's, as I mentioned, that it will expose, PHP driver will expose everything we are bringing as part of ODBC driver. So we will support multi-subnet failover, read-only intent, read-only routing, so on and so forth. So Serverless Express local database. As I mentioned, that today, if you want to develop a small PHP application, you need to install SQL Server Express, IIS, Visual Studio, and sometimes all these components, the permissions don't gel well, and the developers ends up spending a lot more time configuring the server instead of spending time on application development. With this feature, with the file-based database, there's no complex server configuration required, so you can go up and running with your web application development. It's much, much simpler, and based on customer feedback, I think this is very, very valuable for PHP developers. Once you are done with development and you want to move to the production server, all you have to do is make a change in the connection string, and you're good to go. And if you want to use Serverless Express local database as part of your application deployment, you can choose to do so as well if your data is not that big. Before we go to the next slide, any questions so far on PHP Denali pillars? OK. The next is JDBC release pillars, what we are doing with respect to Denali. Last year, we did a survey. Last April, we did a survey, and around more than 75% of our customers asked for type 4 Kerberos integrated authentication. This is very, very critical for Java application developers, especially because of the cross-platform. So we already provided a type 2 Kerberos integrated authentication, which was available from Windows clients. But with this feature, now customers can use single sign-on and Kerberos integrated authentication from both Windows and Linux, so you'll have a unified environment. So very, very key feature for our next release. Super excited about it. As I mentioned, the second one is always on. So among all data access providers. We want to be consistent and make sure that if you have a heterogeneous environment, you can leverage always-on feature from any of the application platforms. Improved connectivity to SQL Azure, that's our third key pillar. As the moment to go to the cloud is becoming bigger and bigger, recently we added support for SQL Azure in our JDBC 3.0 driver. With the next release, we will be adding more improvements, such as you won't require username at server name to connect to cloud with the next release of the driver. So we are enhancing that, but today you can connect to the cloud using our JDBC driver. So let's drill a little deeper into what these pillars mean for Java developers. As I mentioned, currently we support type 2 Kerberos integrated authentication, so only Windows client can leverage that. But type 4, which is a pure Java version, both Windows and Linux or Unix clients will have the same experience when it comes to security. It's a key feature for our financial industry customers because of auditing, and ISVs absolutely love it because that provides them single sign-on. What we will not be providing with this type 4 is if for some reason Kerberos authentication fails, it will not fall back on NTLM, what happens with type 2 Kerberos authentication today. We fully support 2-tier, 3-tier scenarios. We do support cross-realm as well, but when it comes to the validation and spending the resources, we are more focusing on Windows Key Distribution Center. But there is nothing in the driver which will stop you from using in a cross-realm environment. We will also provide customers to modify or provide parameters to login module. They can just provide it via configuration file as part of the driver configuration, and you can modify TGT cache. You can provide location of TGT cache, key tabs, so on and so forth. This is just a quick pictorial view of Kerberos authentication. To walk you through the scenario, a client who needs access to the service, which is on Windows, the client, and then in the middle, you have an app server. So client will pass the credentials to client will use username and password to log in, go to the app server. App server will request the authentication request to KDC, which is a key distribution center, and will receive an encrypted ticket granting ticket, TGT. Once app server receives that, it will use client's credential by impersonating that and will send it back to KDC, and KDC will authenticate saying, OK, fine, this is the legit client, and will provide the service ticket, which app server can use on behalf of the client to access the service. This feature will be supported on JVM 1.5 and 1.6. We will not support JVM 1.4, so that's key point I wanted to call out. Always on. So I'm not going to spend much time on this either because we have talked about it quite a few times. But some of the key things which I want to call out on JDBC, which are different from ODBC and ADO.NET. Multi-subnet failover with our legacy clients. You will not be able to use that feature. That's only available with our next release of JDBC driver, which will come out with Denali. And some of the connection string examples. So that was the main thing I wanted to call out. So with that, let's look at what we have in the cloud. So what's in the cloud? I've just put the Windows Azure, SQL Azure, and all the developer tools which are available for PHP and Java application developers. So you can look at Windows Azure as a super scalable operating system in the cloud, which provides runtime for Java and PHP and many other development environments. SQL Azure is your fully scalable relational database, which provides failover and backup capabilities. And with the combination of this two, what you get is highly available, highly scalable, and highly manageable environment where you can just focus on your application development without worrying about patching and managing the the development environment. On top of Windows Azure and SQL Azure, you'll see that we have a full spectrum of tools available for both PHP and Java developers. And I'll talk about it, some of those tools towards the end of the presentation. Before we get in the demo of developing an application locally and moving to the cloud, I quickly wanted to give you a basics of what we have in the cloud. So the web role, these are the 3 roles which are defined in Windows Azure environment for developers. Web role is targeted towards, it's customized for web application developers, and it's fully supported by iOS 7. A worker role is for generic development, and it can also be used as kind of a processing node for the web role. Whereas a VM role is, it's an image of Windows Server 2008 R2. The caveat with VM role is it is not fully managed and patched at the OS level, similar to web role and worker role. So a user is responsible for patching and managing and making sure our operating system is up to date for VM role. And second is when it comes to managing and in order to provide high availability for VM role, it happens at the level of virtual machine, not at the level of application or process. So that's the key difference between VM role and web role and worker roles. So with this, let's walk into the demo. So this is a very typical environment today that you have a local client, you have a web server running on your computer, and you have a SQL server. So let me show you what I have. So I have my Eclipse installed, and I do have my local Java application, very simple. I instantiate my JDBC driver, and here I have, I should go to the local one. So here I have my string connection, which is actually talking to my local host. I'm using integrated security, and I'm connecting to AdventureWorks database. So I have installed it locally. Let's see. And I'm just running a very, very simple query where I'm saying when I'm connecting, and I'm querying on product ID on production database with the product name. So yeah, so you see that I was able to query. Very simple. Now, let's go to the next stage. That was locally. Everyone has done that. So the next stage is I want to migrate my local database to the cloud and still use application locally. So I follow a very simple step for that. I have my SQL Server, SQL Azure Migration Wizard. It's a very, very simple utility. You can download it from our website. And I just say analyze and migrate my local SQL database. I go to the next one. I specify localhost. I'm using my Windows integrated security. I connect to my local database. It will give me options. I want to move my AdventureWorks 2008 R2. I go to the next step. And I want to move all database objects. So I go next, next. And it will generate a SQL script for me. Takes about a couple of minutes to do that. So it's pretty quick. And the good thing is it will also analyze for you. So if there are any differences on your local database or in the cloud, this tool will automatically figure it out for you, and it will present it in the format which is cloud ready. So very, very simple, very quick. So as soon as this finishes generating the script, all I have to do is specify my cloud credentials, mention where I want to put it in the cloud. I enter my credentials, and I'm good to go.
I have just a general question about the Azure. I mean, if we have a local database and we put it up on the cloud, how is concurrent access handled? Are we all of a sudden potentially having 100 users simultaneously updating a database that we assume was only for one at a time?
I'm sorry. So your question is, how do we handle concurrent access in the cloud?
Right. I guess I'm just not. I haven't read up on all the stuff on Azure yet. But I mean, is it automatically opened up for many users because it's on the cloud, or how do you handle simultaneous access? How is it throttled so there's only one person can get in, or is it not?
So it's not. When it comes to concurrent access, it is not any different than the local database. You can have multiple users accessing the same database, but there can be a throttling issue because of the network bandwidth, so on and so forth. So there are best practices for that. Does that answer your question?
You're asking an access question, really, right? You're saying you don't want anybody to be using the SQL Azure database for yourself?
Right. Yeah. And I guess to some extent it's visibility. I mean, I understand you can still block it, but
you can block it. So there's a few ways that you can handle it with SQL Azure. One is you can provide only your account have access to the database, correct? So that's probably the simplest one. And I think there's also firewall rules where you can restrict it to your IP address, that only that machine would have access to the SQL Azure database.
okay.
You can also make the whole database.
And I think you pretty much answered it. It's the same thing either way, right? It's the same mechanism
Exactly.
under the hood, right? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
We could also make the whole database single user.
yeah.
Block
It,
everybody.
So this is bulk copy. So whatever you have locally, it will just copy as is to the cloud. So here I go to the next stage where I will specify my server name, username, and @server name and my password. For this demo purpose, I've already moved my database to SQL Server, so SQL Azure, so I won't go through that step, but that's the last step. Now let's go back to. So now we are done with migrating my local database to the cloud. Now the only thing I have to do is on my application is change the database string. So let's look at that. Let's go cancel, exit. So this was accessing locally. I commented out, and I used my string. So you can see that my server is the server in the cloud. So this is the name of my database. My username. You can look at my password too. And the database name is test. So if you look at management portal, here is my database. Right here. So this is my database. And I'm the only one who has access to it. I haven't provided access to anybody else for this one. Now let's see. Now we go here, and I can access the same database in the cloud with just one connection string change. So pretty straightforward. For the next part of the demo, I used a JSP program, so I'll use the local version of that, and then I'll show you how I move to the cloud and so on and so forth. So if you look at that, this is my JSP program with exactly the same URL differences. And if you go to the browser, I have my Tomcat server running as well, so I can access it via web browser. Yeah, this is the one. Let me make sure it's not cached. Turns out my Tomcat needs to restart. That's bizarre. That's in the cloud. Okay, yeah, this is it. So this is just locally, nothing is in the cloud. Even you can see my JSP program, it's accessing locally. So as next step of the demo, what I'm going to do is I actually want to move my application completely in the cloud, but I do want to use my local environment for development. So what I can do is I can use Eclipse, and we have Windows Azure plugins for Eclipse because most of Java developers are used to using Eclipse. So I'll use that to create, kind of emulate the Azure environment. And then once we have verified that, yeah, application works, we are good to go, then we can deploy it in the cloud. So let's look at the Windows Azure plugin. So it's pretty simple. For the sake of this demo, I already installed it, but it's pretty easy to install. You go install new software, and then you provide the URL for the Windows Azure plugin, which I have provided at the end of my presentation. And you just follow the step, next, 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 and you're good to go. If you go to installation details, you can actually see that Windows Azure plugin for Eclipse with Java is installed on my system. Then what I did, I created a new project, which is I go to Other, and it gives me an option of creating a Windows Azure project. So I created that, and as part of this, I get these templates. So I have deploy, emulator tools, and a worker role template. As part of worker role, I had just app root folder, and under app root, I had utilities. So these utilities come as part of the Windows Azure plugin. In order for me to deploy a Java application which is accessing SQL Azure, I do need my JDBC driver. Oops. I need my JDBC driver. I need JRE, and I'm using Tomcat server so that I can access it via web. So I just create a zip file for everything. I copy them in my app root, and then I have my example.jsp, which is, again, exactly the same as what I was using locally. So as you can see, I have my connection string. I can use locally or in the cloud from Windows Azure. The key file which you will need for you to deploy this application in the cloud is your startup.cmd. So this actually kind of tells what environment needs to be set up in the cloud for your application to be running. So as you can see that I'm installing Tomcat, I'm installing JRE, I'm installing my JDBC driver, so on and so forth. I'm setting the environment variables towards the end. So this is my basic startup file. Once I've created that, then I'll package my application. So I have my app, I have my rest of the tools which I need to deploy this application. I'm ready to create a package. So this package.xml also comes as part of Windows Azure plugin. The key part where you have to look at is Windows Azure package configuration. So this is my configuration file name. This is the definition, which kind of comes with that. And then this is the application name which you will need. So Windows Azure package.cs package. So this is my application package. Then the most important keyword is the package type. So right now it says cloud. That means if I create a package using this keyword set to cloud, then it will create a package which is ready to deploy in the cloud. But if I want to test locally that how this app will work, all I have to do is modify it and make it local. So now I'm ready to try it out and see if I want to deploy an application in the cloud, how do I verify? I go back here. Oh, first I have to save it. So I save my XML file. And for some reason, you have to make an edit before you can rebuild. And I rebuild my package. So it will take, oh, it's done in 3 seconds. So this one is for local. So you can go and see that now it has populated emulator tools because it knows that I'm trying to create a package for the cloud, but I want to first try it out locally and see how it works. And it also creates, it populates deploy folder, so you can see what are the files which are going to be in the cloud. So all this which we had put in the worker role, when I build the package, now it has put it in the deploy folder for you to see that what all will go in the cloud. So now I'm ready to try it out in the emulator. So I'm running my emulator. It will mimic the environment which you will see in the cloud, and if everything is good to go, green, you have tried it out, then you can just deploy your application in the cloud. Oh, I need to stop. You need to keep in mind when you're trying this out, make sure that you don't have Tomcat running locally, because as part of this emulation, the role itself will start an instance of Tomcat server. So you don't want these to be conflicting. So that's done. Now let's see what's going on in display. So this is what I get in the emulator. As you can see that I have a VM created under worker role, and it's processing, it's deploying my application for me to try it out. So we'll have to wait a couple of minutes before the environment is set up, the Tomcat server is started, so on and so forth. So it's pretty nifty to try this out locally before you even log in and go to the cloud. Any questions so far while we are waiting for emulator to finish? Good. That means everyone is up to speed. Okay, so now it's starting Tomcat instance. So let's see whether this emulator which deployed my application, it works or not. Yep, it works. So this is exactly the application which is talking to my database in the cloud, and which eventually I want to deploy in Windows Azure environment. So this is an emulation of that, and I'm just verifying that it works. So now that's done. All I have to do is I go back to Eclipse. I reset my emulator, so it cleans up everything. It kills the, it tears down, destroys the role. Okay, so it cleaned up everything for me. I can close it. Now I can just go back and change my package.xml and make it for cloud. I save this. I go to my startup, and I rebuild it. So as part of rebuilding, it goes and it cleans up, deploy, emulator tools, everything, because now you're building it for the cloud. So the emulator tool is gone. In the deploy, you will see only two files. One is your application package, and second is your service definition. And that's all you need in order to deploy in the cloud. And you're ready to go. So you can go to your portal, and here, for the demo purpose, I already created a service because I didn't want us to wait on that. So I have a hosted service which I created this morning. As part of that, I created an instance test, and I deployed my application package, which is an example.jsp, and that's it. All I did was I uploaded these two. Now let's see if it works. So here is my URL. I just put it in staging. It's not in production. I go to my app, and it's working here. Okay. Oh, I just had to wait. No, this is not the right one. Every time. Yeah. So now my application is sitting actually in Windows Azure, talking to data in SQL Azure. There's nothing locally. So that's the end of the demo. So you can see I followed very simple 4 steps, and I was ready to deploy my application in the cloud. The same principles apply to PHP applications. There will be a little difference depending on the tools, but pretty much whatever we have available for Java, there are actually more things available for PHP developers. And if you want to see the demo on how to deploy a PHP application in the cloud, the last year TechEd session, they went over that, so that's why I picked Java this time. So for this demo, the things which I used, I downloaded Apache Tomcat, Eclipse EE version, our latest JDBC driver, which is certified for SQL Azure, Windows Azure SDK, SQL Azure Migration Wizard, JRE version 6, and SQL Server 2008 R2 Express or higher. I'm using a standard version. With this, to summarize quickly, data in the cloud, SQL Azure Migration Wizard, very, very simple to use. Follow a few clicks, and you can migrate your data from local computer to the cloud. SQL Server Management Studio actually allows you to manage your database in the cloud. So whatever you're used to using today, managing SQL Server, you'll use exactly the same tools to manage database in the cloud. So very simple. Windows Azure plugin for Eclipse. As I mentioned, that we have these plugins available for both Java and PHP. Java is more, like Java developers are more used to of Eclipse, but PHP developers are more on command line. But for the parity, we wanted to make sure that whatever developers' preferences, they have all the tools available to develop their application. Windows Azure SDK for Java and PHP. So these SDKs, what they provide is they provide an abstraction of REST and XML for Azure's storage, compute, and management interfaces. And they present it to Java and PHP developers in Java and PHP APIs respectively. So very, very handy. I do want to call out, though, that our PHP SDK is a lot more mature than our Java SDK. In fact, we have people using PHP SDK for commercial development. For example, Hotel Peeps, they develop their analytics. They do their trends with the application, which is in Windows Azure, PHP-based application, accessing data from SQL Azure, and fully developed using PHP SDK. So, and we are continuously working on making Java SDK better. So we don't have a clear timeline yet, but we should be pretty close to PHP as well. Some more Windows Azure tools. Not everyone is used to using graphical editors. A lot of people use command line interfaces. So we do have Windows Azure Starter Kit for Java, which provides command line tools for Java developers. In fact, plugin is based on top of Windows Azure as Starter Kit. So it's not that you're going to miss out any features if you use one or other. Similarly, we have our PHP command line tools available. Very, very heavily used by PHP developers, more than the plugin. It's open source, available from Codeplex or through our web PI. Windows Azure Companion, that is available only for PHP developers. And the best feature of Windows Azure Companion is, so you saw me deploying my application in the cloud. Now I have to make a change in that. For my Java application, I have to make the change locally, recreate the package, and upload it. With Windows Azure Companion, you can make those changes in the cloud itself. You don't have to make changes locally and reload it. So very useful. Keep in mind, it is still in community technical preview. It's not production ready, so feel free to try it out, see how you like it. One thing which I want to call out for PHP developers is our SQL Server Reporting Services SDK. What this does is it provides SOAP API for PHP applications to talk to SQL Server Reporting Services. This has been a biggest ask from PHP community. They leverage our reporting services heavily. And what reporting services allows you, it's a server-based reporting where it allows you to create, manage, deploy various reports for PHP applications. So some of the features are you can query list of reports, you can query list of parameters, you can query various formats, and execute and render various reports. So very useful, very heavily used by a lot of our customers. With this, I quickly want to summarize. We are going to have a lot of compelling features for both Java and PHP developers in Denali. And we will have community technical preview for PHP driver with the next release of Denali. Community technical preview, CTP. We already have one CTP out for our JDBC driver, and we will have the next one again coming out with the Denali next CTP. And we already have a cloud infrastructure today, which our Java and PHP developers have been leveraging heavily. We have a wide range of tools available for both Java and PHP developers to make it a very seamless transition to go from local to the cloud. With this, any questions? Yes. Mm-hmm. So plugin, the question is, does the plugin packages Tomcat and other tools necessary for you to deploy your application? The plugin provides you a template where you can go populate tools which you need. So when I installed plugin, I did not have Tomcat, JRE, JDBC driver populated in it. All I did was I downloaded them, I created a zip file, and I copied it in the plugin. And when I created the package, it automatically incorporated everything I provided to the plugin. So it did not include it by default. Any other questions? Oh, the word. Some related content with respect to this session. As I mentioned, we had tons of information on always-on feature for Denali. Slides will be posted later on, so feel free to check those out if you didn't make it to the session. There was a really great session on Windows Azure platform, so if you missed that, again, slides will be available. From my team, we had other 2 interactive sessions on ODBC and SQL Azure connectivity related. So I believe even those slides will be posted. Some track resources, so feel free to check out. We do have a great connectivity portal where you can find information about any of the data access technologies to SQL Server and SQL Azure. Very useful. I have given links to both PHP and JDBC driver. And our interoperability team actually does a lot of work in bridging the gap between Java and PHP developers and SQL Server. So very, very useful information on what their team does, because this Windows Azure plugin is actually developed by interoperability team. We also have some database platform resources. Check us out on SQL Server Twitter for more information and see the latest updates. If you haven't been to our booth, Programmability, check us out. If you have any questions, there will be a lot of people to provide help with that. Some more resources. At the end, your feedback is super, super critical to us. Let us know how we can make it better for the next time. If there is any other information which you would like to see on this subject, or if anything is missing, let us know. We'll try to do better next time. And here is my tag for you to provide feedback. Thank you.